Hey guys, what's going on? Happy Thursday. Thanks for having me back on your screen. This is second week of public show, and then I'll do continue on and do the member show afterwards. So I've got 3 things that I want to talk about today right after this important message.
To see Raymond's weekly show for members in its entirety, click the join button below. If you don't see a join button, there's a link in the description. Then you'll see all of the member exclusive content in the community tab.
We're going to have kind of a main topic today, something that's kind of been bugging me that I want to talk to you about. It shouldn't surprise you, especially if you saw the member show that I did last Thursday, but I don't know, maybe it'll surprise you. Then number 2, Nikon Z7 studio self-portraits. Well, after Leigh did the self-portrait with the Z7, I got some time with the Z7 with the same setup. I'm going to show you the pictures that I took of her with my unique spin that I put on them, where she didn't have to use SnapBridge and she could focus on being the model. And then finally today I'm going to talk about next week. And then at the end of this show, for everybody, members, you log in and we'll go through a more detailed show, a longer show. And I've got some interesting things that happened to me this week, and why I sound like I'm a little out of breath. All will be explained. For one, in that show, we take you behind the scenes on a little hike that Leigh did for a video, and I kind of tagged along, and I wore the RemoView K1 with the backpack mount. And we got chased away by a thunderstorm, but I got good footage. And then for another product she's testing, well, I'll roll a little bit of footage here, and I'll talk about what I've got on the front of my bike there as well, over in the member show. But now for everybody, I want to focus on those 2 main topics today. The one that I haven't told you yet, and then the photos and my first real photo shoot with the Nikon Z7. Now, I know that if you saw my Tuesday video this week, that there's one thing that I really like about it, and then I'll talk through what I did with the studio portraits as well. But before I go there, let's talk about what I'm calling, for lack of a better term, drive-by critics. Now, I'm not talking about photo critiques. That's its own animal. I'm talking about camera announcement critiques, and what we click on, and then what some people who are on this side of the camera talk about. Now, number 1, I'm not singling anybody out. I've been doing this for about 3 weeks now, tops. So I'm not singling anybody out who's been on YouTube for a ton longer than I've had. I've only had sporadic appearances over the years. I'm hoping to do a very brief Tuesday video, and then these longer form videos on Thursday. What I'm talking about is drive-by critics who take something like the recent announcement that because of some banding issue, the Z7 dynamic range isn't effectively as good as the D850, which is like the gold standard at the moment for dynamic range. The 2 memory cards, I'm not going there in detail, but we've hit that one to death. And every time, and then there was the Canon, the Canon mirrorless announcement and different critiques there. So many of these critiques, so many videos like this one are made by people who take some small fact or rumor and turn it into a massive video or series of videos about what's wrong with that camera and why we shouldn't use it and why it's not professional or why it's not this and why it's not that. For people, I respect people talking about what they want to talk about, but is it good intentioned when that person or people really have no intention of ever really using that camera, investing time in it other than some news article or rumor site or forum post that they read, and then want to expand on that? If it's a system that they're invested in or are going to be investing in, I get it. They want to talk through the considerations of owning the camera, things to look out for, things not. But I think sometimes, and I think frankly the YouTube business model encourages this, you might get a lot more views about talking negatively about one or a couple aspects of a new camera that's not even out yet than if you talk about how great it is. And I'm on a fine line here because these are things we should feel valid to discuss. We should be able to discuss these things. I want to be able to make videos for you and not be restricted on content, but I also want to stay very genuine. So if I'm talking about something just because I think it's got a lot of attention and I don't really care because I'm not really going to invest in that camera, either time or money or both in that camera anyway, that doesn't seem very genuine to me. If I'm a Nikon user and something comes up about the Nikon Z7 and I've got one ordered or I own one, to me that's a different story. Wow, I'm investing in the system and I'm nervous about something. Rather than let's just use Pentax as an example. Maybe I don't own Pentax. I don't plan on owning Pentax. There's been a Pentax announcement. There's something in it that people are latching onto. So then I'm going to make some humongous video or series of videos talking about how terrible that is and how Pentax is screwing up. That's where I get nervous for two reasons. One, for the person or persons making that content, it's like, well, what are you after here? Is this a genuine commentary, or is this how many views I can get in my first 5 days that video is launched? I understand that. Number two, is that fair to people who are going to own the camera, invest the time, and actually experience what it is that person's talking about? So let's take the Z7 banding thing that came out. You've probably seen it. If not, if you take a Z7 image under certain circumstances, I've heard ISO 200 or under, you got to push the shadow 6 stops, and then maybe depending on the image, there might be some banding. So let's say we make a video on that, and we have no intention of ever owning the camera. So maybe some people were looking at it and they say, hey, that's a camera I might be interested in. Oh my gosh, this banding issue seems huge. I'm not sure that's a camera that I want. Versus someone who talks about the issue and says, yeah, I'm concerned about this banding issue. I'm going to try it out. I'm going to let you know. Is this a lot of hype? Is this one unique circumstance? Or will this affect the day-to-day use of the camera? Wow, when I see a video headline that says, the one big flaw in that new camera, oh my gosh, I've got to find out what that big flaw is I click on it and I watch the video from end to end, thereby contributing and validating that kind of approach. Even if that person making that video is reading this information somewhere else, never intends on investing time to follow up, to use the camera, to own the camera, to see if the problem is really, really a problem or just something that came up on a slow news day ahead of a camera release, or maybe when there were some pre-production units out there. So my message to content creators is, I don't know, keep doing your thing, but stay true to yourself and consider, am I making something for views or am I making something to be helpful? And the thing that I've got to remember is I've only got enough time in the day for a certain amount of things. So when I see a headline or a video title that says, oh, the one big thing that prevents me from considering this or that, well, maybe I don't click on that. Maybe I go click on something else where I think there's going to be something more positive or something that's in more detail. My goal here, except when I criticize the critics, is to keep it pretty positive. But you know what? I can't help myself sometimes. So I got to speak up on the things that are on my mind and the issues of the day. So now let's go on to the second part. A little bit for everybody, and then I'm going to talk through more of the images on the member show right after. Okay, for these photo edits, I'm in Capture NX-D today, and I was pretty excited because I've got the latest version now that takes into account some things like the new picture controls, the, extended picture controls, additional picture controls, that were in the Z7 specifications. And frankly, I forgot about them. I'll put the little blurb up on the screen from Nikon's website. And then here they are as adjustments that we can make to this wonderful image of me. Now, I'm going to show you images that I took, but I couldn't help but get into character and show you a little bit about my portion of the photo shoot, which is 2 photos. And I'm being ridiculous. I don't even know what I'm doing there. Is Capture NX-D the best? No, in fact, you'll even see it kind of lags for a moment there as I selected the other image, and it's not so instant on some of the changes that I make, but it's free and it knows how to talk exactly to Nikon RAW files. So I thought I'd give it a little spin today. In fact, if I uncheck that, I did make, oh, there we go. See, I lagged there and I second guessed myself. So again, it's free. Use it as your discretion. I like it because you're working with software designed by the factory to work with the factory raw files. I've got nothing against Lightroom, but today I'm using this. And actually, I've got some interesting Lightroom alternatives that I'll be talking about in the coming weeks as well. And I'm pretty excited about that because that's something that's been mentioned time and time again on various folks' videos, or what are some of the alternatives to these monthly subscription options. Leigh made a good video about the free alternatives, and this is one of them. So let's go to an image that I took of her, and I took a lot here in this shoot. The first 10 are usually me finding my stride with the particular setup, and let's find a representative example of my style a little bit in contrast to Leigh's. I always seem to I'll direct the eyes. I won't necessarily direct every shot on where to put her hands or anything like that. Sometimes some fine tuning. A lot of times I'm saying, hey, put your fingers together, move your hand down just a little bit, but I'm relying on her for the overall pose. But one thing you will find as you see me shoot a little bit more is I stand pretty tall, so she's seated in a stool, and I like shooting down from above as I am a bit here, and I like when the head and the eyes are doing different things. So I might very well have told her for this photo, turn your head to the left, but then look back at me to the right. I used to work at a talent agency. I think I mentioned this in a video a long time ago, a Q&A that I did. I used to work at a talent agency every weekend, and I took shots of 20 to 40 people on any given Saturday morning. So that's not an ideal way to do things, and I wouldn't go back and do that again. But it was an interesting experience in that every week I was working with 20 to 40 people and trying to find the best pose. So I've got my bag of tricks, and depending on the person, depending on how I think the flow will go, I might pull some of those things that I learned just from working with so many different people. And one thing that I always found flattering was turning the head and then sort of looking back, and I think it flatters Leigh very well here. So let's find, this is more a little straightforward here, a little more classic. But again, I've kind of got her peeking up. Maybe I had her put the chin down a little bit here and peek up at me through the hair. Maybe I covered up her left eye a little more than some people would, but again, it's a style. And then the other thing is you'll notice I've got the top of the flowers cropped out of the image. Personally, I have no problem with that. I know some people lose their mind, and that's okay. We all get our own minds, and we can lose our minds when we want to. But for me, that's a non-issue. In fact, for me, I think it helps draw me, the viewer, into the image a little more if I don't have everything so perfectly framed and fitting entirely in the frame. It almost becomes larger than life or three-dimensional to me at that point in time. But I certainly understand that everybody might not agree. Let's look for other DNA here for my shooting style. I don't think I would have directed Leigh to turn her head, so that was all her. But again, I'm shooting from above. I'm shooting tight in with the flowers there rather than having everything framed perfect. I have half a shoulder here. I have just the upper half of the shoulder over here, and I've got her looking up at me. Again, she put her head down. I think those last couple I was just letting the camera run. I think those are in between expressions. Let's see what else I've got here. So let's pick one, and let me show you some of those new options that you've got in Capture with the Z7. This one kind of jumps out at me here. So it's vertical, so it's not filling the frame here. And again, I cropped very aggressively, even with the hair and the entire shoulder there. So again, some people might not like that. I'm drawn right to her face there, and then the flowers I do have entirely in the crop there. I don't plan that. I go with the flow while I'm shooting, and what I think looks nice at the time happens, but I can understand why some people might find this awkward. In fact, if we look at the one before, it's a little bit further out. And then I kind of took a step forward. Let's see over here. Yeah, so let's go for the, you know what, let's fill the frame. Let's fill the frame. Let's go for this next one where I turned the camera back. That one. Let's go to the next one here. It's catching up. Now this is an 11-inch MacBook Air that's a few years old. This is not your latest and greatest Mac powerhouse. But let's work with this image here. And you've got some of your classic settings here on the left-hand side. We've got the exposure, we've got the white balance. Let's leave those. Here's those picture controls. So this is fun. This is fun. So you've got your normal standard Nikon ones there. And then we go to things like Dream. And the best way to learn what these do is to click on them. Denim. Denim. It's pink. Charcoal. That's interesting. Carbon. Very, very dark. Let's go for standard. There we go. So that's leaning on our white balance. Actually, for skin tones, it's not bringing in the significant alterations. Now down here, here's where I've got some of my tone controls, brightness, contrast. Back in the old days with D100 images, I was constantly doing brightness and contrast. If I do that here, that's going to be maybe a little bit too much. So here, if I can find them again, yeah, there we go. We've got these master lightness curves, and then down below, levels and curves. So you can, like you can in Lightroom and a lot of the other Photoshop and a lot of the other packages here, you can make adjustments here from conservative to extreme. That's with my levels. Now up here, I've got my curves for my lightness where I might make a little S curve. Now I wonder if in Capture these days, you can actually load these tone curves back into the camera. I remember doing that a long time ago, but I haven't done that very recently, where I might set a tone curve up in the software that matches a particular lighting and backdrop well, and keep that in the camera for the next time that I do that kind of setup, and effectively get my tone curve edits on my images as I'm shooting them. So there's kind of an interesting look. And I'm obviously, if you saw Leigh's shoot from last week, I'm not going in the same direction with the edits. I'm using Capture NX-D. I'm not running filters, film simulations, anything like that. I'm just being fairly conservative about some things that I lean on. And you can see if I lean a little bit more on the S here and make a little more of an S, I get more of a, maybe more of a commercial look, maybe a grittier look. And if I take this off, I'm kind of back to normal. Now, one thing I want to talk about here before I sort of wrap this piece for everybody, I'll do more of this over in the member show, as I mentioned, is you do have the control points now in Capture NX-D. And Leigh actually reminded of it, where I was talking about some of the things that I plan to do. And she said, oh, you know, you can do control points now. And I said, I actually had no idea you could do that in NX-D now. I sort of remembered something about it. Let's see if I know how to do it here. Yeah, so we go over here to the retouch, and then we go down here to this weird pitchfork looking thing. And then let's find something where I've got the flowers in their entirety, if I have one like that. Let's take a look at this one. So what we could do here is we could go, just to give you an example, is we can go here, we can change the size. Now you get a circle. If you know a way to get anything besides a circle, let me know. So we'll do a circle here, and we'll brighten these up. Maybe lower the contrast a little bit, but brighten them. That's kind of dulling them a little bit. So let's just push them just to show the effect. We'll crank up the saturation. We're totally blowing out the reds. And then we'll make another one up here. Again, just to show you kind of what's what with this. So then we'll set another one here for this side. We get to move this a little bit, change the brightness there. And it just takes, now this machine lags a little bit. I'm recording in QuickTime, so that certainly slows it down a little bit more. So I'll be interested if any of you use Capture NX-D, when you make adjustments, are they instant, real time, or are they maybe a second behind real time, like mine seems to be? I've got 2 control points. Those are, let's see if I know how to, yeah, there we go. Now let's get them out of the equation. So that was kind of silly up here. I brightened them up. Not too, yeah, it's kind of silly. But just to kind of show you what the control points do. And then, like I said, a little walkthrough of my shooting style and how I did things a little bit different when Leigh has the camera on the tripod and was using SnapRidge versus when I'm sort of walking around with the camera. Okay, guys, and again, more edits of those pictures and more pictures in the member portion today. One thing I want to talk about for next week, it's going to be a really interesting show, and you guys are going to see me learn more, because what I'm going to do next week, and you can provide some input to this, is I'm going to interview someone and I'm going to ask them 5 tough questions. And the person I'm going to interview, this is a good practice round for me. The person I'm going to interview is Leigh, and I'm going to ask her 5 tough questions. So if you have any questions that you suggest that I ask, I've got to narrow it down, so I can't ask them all and never answer them all. But if you have any tough questions that you'd like me to ask Leigh, let me know in the comments, and I'll see if I can sneak some of them into my top 5. All right, everybody, have a great week, and I'll talk to you in just a few days.
To see Raymond's weekly show for members in its entirety, click the join button below. If you don't see a join button, there's a link in the description. Then you'll see all of the member exclusive content in the community tab.